Strategic analysts who have spent their professional lives studying conflict are now warning of a scenario that sounded like alarmism just 6 months ago. The use of nuclear weapons is being discussed as a realistic option by multiple parties to global conflicts. This is a sober, documented 60-day planning horizon. The United States is pinned down in two theaters simultaneously. In Europe, support for Ukraine has reached a level where strikes are hitting infrastructure inside Russian territory, while in the Gulf, American precision weapons are being consumed at rates production cannot replenish. Every week these conflicts continue, the depletion of munitions compromises America's capacity to deter a peer competitor in a third theater, like East Asia. The hardware required for a major engagement is simply being run down. The professional military and intelligence communities knew this strategy would fail. Both the head of the CIA and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs warned the president that a shock-and-awe decapitation strategy lacked a viable path to success and would compromise security globally. They were overruled. If the experts knew the military strategy was unsustainable, we have to ask why the United States is structurally incapable of negotiating a diplomatic off-ramp. Global leverage has shifted because the U.S. is overextended across both the European and Gulf theaters. This has allowed Iran to operate from a position of strength, backed by a new technological alliance with Russia. This map illustrates the overlapping satellite architecture of Russia and China over the Gulf. Combined, these systems provide a persistent surveillance picture of American military assets that is more comprehensive than anything available to Iran independently. Russia provides the semiconductor components that process this satellite data. These computer chips translate raw intelligence into the precise targeting solutions required for drone and ballistic missile guidance systems. We see the results in the field. A 67-year-old Iranian F-5 aircraft recently penetrated American air defenses to strike a target in Kuwait. It was flying with updated guidance architecture that effectively erased the military technology gap America assumed would produce decisive superiority. Tehran is moving away from American demands as its leverage grows. Under the pressure of this conflict, Iran has pushed the nuclear question to the bottom of its negotiating agenda, focusing instead on its regional sovereign authority. American military pressure is not producing Iranian capitulation. It is actively accelerating their military integration with rival superpowers. The decision to ignore professional military assessments in favor of a failed strategy points to a systemic breakdown in Washington. The administration chose to rely on an intelligence picture sold by Israeli leadership, one that promised the Iranian government would collapse within days of an air campaign. With those promises proven false, a settlement is required. Yet the American figures with the political standing to make commitments that will stick refuse to enter the room. Figures like J.D. Vance have the domestic political base to secure an agreement, but like Marco Rubio, they are avoiding the process. They understand that ending the war requires acknowledging reality on the ground, and that reality carries a heavy domestic cost. Acknowledging Iranian negotiating strength means making concessions that the Israel lobby would frame as surrender. For anyone with 2028 presidential ambitions, the personal political cost of a diplomatic resolution outweighs their institutional obligations. The correct strategic off-ramps are not blocked by a lack of options, but by the rigid math of domestic political self-interest. When we map the actual requirements of the involved powers, we find an unresolvable gridlock of red lines. Iran will not agree to any settlement that severs its relationship with its forward defensive perimeter, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, nor will it surrender its right to civilian nuclear enrichment. Israel maintains an absolute refusal to accept any settlement that leaves that nuclear infrastructure intact. Because the American political system is structurally incapable of contradicting these Israeli strategic preferences, the path to a meaningful agreement is closed. This makes a Rube Goldberg arrangement the only likely outcome, a temporary pause in hostilities that addresses the immediate economic damage without resolving any of the underlying structural conflicts. Because a genuine diplomatic resolution is blocked, the escalating geopolitical pressure must eventually find a violent release valve. This leads to three specific escalation scenarios. First, the Russian strategic establishment is now debating a demonstrative nuclear strike in Europe to signal that the cost of enabling strikes on Russian soil has crossed an unacceptable threshold. Second, as conventional campaigns fail to eliminate Iran's nuclear program, Israel may calculate that a preemptive nuclear strike against Iranian facilities is the only option left to prevent Iranian weaponization. The final scenario is interconnected escalation. In this globalized grid, a localized nuclear decision triggers a chain reaction of rational responses by other powers, moving the entire system toward a trajectory no one intended. The countdown to these scenarios is not a matter of years. It is governed by the decisions made in the next 6 to 8 months. Catastrophic escalation is the logical, mathematically inevitable endpoint of a geopolitical system paralyzed by political